让做chiwa kompe lo kane ski ore la na ju da jina shiwa de ya ne ju da gen cha san shi gen cha san zum song da de ya ne ga tu ya ka ya ma de ji za ne za da chiwa zam le ya ne ga shi ru le sem bi sem che che hwa ya ma de ti sem ji na ne pan de ha ya ma de je de ne ga che ore se la na da de 저 마시니에 마시비 린텔라 소수에 니마 디버사야디 디버샤야기 네 님부터 주고 디버샤바나 샤투요레 아니 딘델야 아니 저기 원도 당엘레기 두비규 가르사바나 유튜브 투고레 디 유튜브 마두 바자 어다 데네기 네디 디버샤야다 데네기 개어주야지 마중하지 시선데 배사기에 선배 두신의 심지체 호래 디심지체바 이나 아니가 저기 체델이야 디보샤야당 원도당에 유튜브 투고요레스 제가 유튜브 투고요 봐서 데네 심지체바는 유튜브 투고요레스 제가 데네자 당은 저기 다 치와 곰베기 로이카르시레라나 제가다 디바샤 마샤바당 아니 원도 당엘에 주베 계절 마주바지 시선 배사그리에서 베 두체네 네 삼당고래 제디 삼게하디 디레세 치워 곰베게로 딘디디네세사.
So continuing to look at the practice on being mindful of our own death. So when one engages in this meditation, one is looking at our actual situation, the reality of our situation. So one comes to recognize the certainty of our death and the uncertainty of the time of our death. So this meditation, when done correctly, will not lead to any fear or dread about our impending death. But because one is engaging in this meditation with an understanding of dependence arising, that one's death comes about independent on causes, that our rebirth, where it will be, comes about independent on causes. Because of that understanding, a strength of mind arises, a confidence recognizing that by creating specific causes, our future lives will go well. By striving to accumulate merit and to purify past misdeeds, my future lives will go well. So therefore, through engaging in this meditation, one shouldn't, the conclusion wouldn't be one of fear, but one of confidence. And with that confidence comes a spaciousness of mind and a determination.
Dene zada nga tu chiwa komye ki lo de komnang kanes kom koresne ane zawa sumna gyusen sum tacheba gyusen ku tacheba sum yukone kom kores jisanda zawa sumne karesne ngebra chiwa samdaya da namchi ngeme sanya samdaya chiwe je chwe motoba jan gange kya peng mare semedu samdaya de sedi on nga tu issue sawaje.
Where we came up to this morning was to look at the actual meditation for the mindfulness of death. And we saw that this has 3 roots, 9 reasons, and 3 decisions. And the 3 roots were specified as being firstly, that the certainty of one's death, secondly, the uncertainty as to when death will come, and thirdly, the contemplation that the time of death, nothing except the Dharma will be of benefit.
So
that's where we got up to this morning, but there were still some questions. So perhaps we can take any outstanding questions first. Peter?
We heard earlier that in order to have the best chance of having a perfect human rebirth, you need to concentrate now on Dharma practice of the order of things, so that when we die, we're in the best situation. So that's clear. However, also you have said that when we die, we'll be more confident that we have done what we can. My question is, and also we have from other times we have been taught that being peaceful and positive and calm when you're dying is very beneficial. along with being peaceful and calm, beneficial in itself.
Whether it's the peacefulness at the time of death and the calm and the confidence of time of death, whether it's come from Dharma practice or not, is dying with such a state of mind beneficial?
In terms of future review.
Yes. Okay.
Digi Jewa Chema, Jewa Len, the pen, Mapen said it, got Gachi, Gablessim, Susugi, Chiknamda, and Shena Kai Meneda, the Yaro, she called it more Susim, Chikle Rachuna, Yahurwa, then Chingamda, Kalashidu Kable, Chiknamda, Shena, the negative Gujala Chabi, Chasam Jewaina, and Digi, and Chasam Kia, Shidu Kable, Shelia, Namda, Shena, Control Avaina, and Joachimanga again, and Yanachimur. The Denigism that Denigashena, the Kaimavachiatic, Gabrielia, Denigi, Chiki, Shidu Kabla, and similarly, just Yanachik Sosugi, and Shelia, Pembe, some roads that Denir cross on Benene, and make Joachimala Yaga to Agi, and the Chiki Pendo Yungurwa.
In general, it certainly is better to pass from this life to and progress to the next with a peaceful, calm state of mind. In particular, if one then can also be directed to generate virtuous thoughts, such as virtuous thoughts towards others, wishing to be of benefit to others. But even just passing with a peaceful state of mind is definitely preferable to the opposite state of mind, which may be one of attachment to all that you're leaving behind, people or possessions, or aversion in terms of siblings perhaps squabbling over your possessions. So to pass from this life with such a mind is entirely possible. And that is not at all helpful. But to die with a peaceful mind, this is definitely better. In particular, if it's more than just a peaceful mind, it's a virtuous mind.
I found something very helpful that I found out at Peter Strike's memorial service, and it was just that because they had a homemade coffin for him, and I was asking one of the family, where it had come from, and he made it himself 20 years before, and he had it beside his bed, and it was sort of very interesting to me, and how helpful I think that would be. They were talking about maybe using it as a bookshelf or something, but he just wanted it kept beside the bed. And for 20 years, I think, because all his family also felt very moved by a lot of the little wisdom that he shared with them. I thought, oh, that's quite clever and skillful. And then they decorated it, and so somehow he reminded himself. So I just, didn't really have a question, but I just sort of thought, to me, it struck me as powerful. And I thought, I think I would make one.
Dide Shingam Sona Tigoro Masuvine, Nanzu Chike, Namun that Sosogi, Namun Yamlin Chigio Bazadin, got Chiwamita sometime Ara Tigoro Wapene, as we did. The Shingam Servine that the Chikin with Chagora in a Masuvine that the Chick got Titor water.
Yes, doing something like that certainly would serve as a reminder of one's impending death. Ideally, one would do so through meditation, in that then that can be ever present. But certainly having a visible reminder is also very useful.
Denegi, Jinanganzu Kawasa, the Chunyam, the Jibas, Chukilin, and Malena, Kawasa, Ungurua, Benechu Kimelene, Sosumi, Ishankola, Robotia, Robert Pandosia, some of this Gawarwa. You go Chuki, Kishimarwa, in a Kawara, and the Chuli, and Nambola, Kistiban, Kawaras, and Kawarwa, Shania, Pandosia, sometime Mione, Chukimele, Conjo Kimelene, Shankola, Robotia, that's about saying Dunga Gangan, Celia, Pandosia, Mungurwa. Using Gawarwa. Since Gawanza, Anzuki, Shidu Kablia, Sem Amrak Hameva, Telechi Shivena, Sosugi, then Gawakaze, Sosugi, Debirin, Cheke, Gawakaze, Deniga, some look, give some look, shook chair, Yobana, and the give us a lady on the Jugrias. Since that the degree lady shook chair and the debilate on the Jugrias. And the nigga. Me those Chinese Sumuda, the names that I actually can't do a case, and then can some delay to scan do case and give you some time again to case on and give you some column within Yavachimali, St. Yavasan actually generally get to it. And the name she do again and but chase and control to gain the test of it, and dig conjugate and Chavala so case on when and dig engine thing, Jing National and your rest in it is that. Ma Jimmy, Mazugi, Jiklele, Uchirochi, Dinamidina, the Gensam de Level, Sabsubject, and the Lama Juana, on to certain, when you might get much of Sabakia, and Yankee, Colia, and they gave you some like to Yagi, Tapshiro Karachena, and the Jikpando your resin word that the nigger, Sumutuala Mature.
The accumulation of virtue is something that all beings engage in. It's not dependent on being Buddhist or being religious. So, for example, amongst humans, donating money to charities or volunteering, helping those in need. This is all virtuous endeavors leading to the accumulation of merit. So when the time of death for a being comes, they will have virtue on their continuum. And whatever imprint is strongest is what is going to propel their rebirth. But what also has an impact on what kind of imprint will ripen at the time of death is the condition of, maybe you could say the condition of the mind, the state of the mind of the person passing from this life. So if you are with someone who is passing from this life, you or whoever is there can have an impact on what imprints ripen for them at the end of their life, and thereby have an impact on their next rebirth. So ideally, one wants to help the person to leave this life with a mind that's calm and relaxed, as opposed to a mind that's agitated. A mind that is not calm and relaxed may well be afflicted, drawn with attachment, or repelled with aversion. So this certainly can happen as someone is leaving this life, moving to the next. And that will make it much more likely that non-virtuous imprints will ripen. On the other hand, though, if around the person are conditions which help lead to the arisal of virtuous minds. This will be very helpful. So perhaps the recitation of prayers and so forth, that this person knows very well. This can lead to the ripening of virtuous imprints and help them in their future lives. So therefore, creating a conducive environment for someone to leave this life is really very beneficial to them.
enzevelage cheva na shin de ko jida de ngana jugi na myune jik chue to no lobjon chige bende ko shie gams masuna jige gam shie ge gam masu she and de shana de gro bene yigi chembo chi je da de dinalma chiwa ngeba namchi ngeba ngeme ane chiwe ju chue ki ma gang ge pen mo do ba pen do ma se bi yigi ti je so so yi 되네 바조스 돼서 담도와 이게 전부 지시하는 남자들이 통배 대수도 대리로 안에 뒤에 탐지입니다 봐 사세 탐지 동아와 최 탐지 동시에 다음에 봐 양알리 비시와 세비 직시 지시 또 이게 전부 지시하는 나 그디나디 통화도 오다디 저 뒤집니다 그 남자여 봐서 대투에 다 대수의 체도 되게 직시 되게 되게 지시하나 안에 디양 소소기 대해를 판도여로 꾸며지고 이제 Come to session, such a guy, such a car or water. And the moon that church on some down at the main, in the session, I had to go dance to Yungurua. Then the moon of the church or some dancing Tangu wasn't that, and Yamlan Kalkanzam Chigore, Dinisa, 60 part law, did on that some to some done, the dinner goes also Yamlan Jail Pingua.
And certainly having a reminder of our impending death is very useful, like in the illustration that Tsepel mentioned. For those who are not so skilled in carpentry, then that's perhaps not so easy. But what can be very useful is if you, write some verses that you find inspiring on a large post-it note and have it somewhere that you will see to remind you. So, for example, you could write the 3 roots here, that death is certain, the time of death is uncertain, and only the Dharma will help us at the time of death. Each time one sees that, what one has learnt and meditated on will ripen in one's mind. Or another well-known verse, the 4 seals. This could also be very useful to have in place, a place situated in your home, just to remind you. All compounded phenomena are impermanent. All contaminated phenomena are subject to suffering. All phenomena are empty and selfless. Nirvana is peace. And again, independent on one's prior study and meditation. Verses such as this, which touch you, which inspire you, will trigger your thought process to go in this direction, away from mundane concerns, but back to the Dharma.
긴이 도도 매바 삼바 제단 치에기다 내바도 리용을 되네기 치에리도 유엔 처상 상에도 긴강기야 안도야기 시에기 탑시 시에 매바 수토야 말에서 치다 내바로 온라 치다 시에서 땡땡이 용거리에서 대야네 용도 qabla 긴강기야 도비기 도도 매바 되네 삼당고래서 직체 되네 체라 네바 메징 디제 바마치도 용와 삼바 지나다 체리에 nemba 접제 체링 다스가야 말 지나데 체 마통도 저에 바 유마셔바제 용고래서 삼다 직제 되네 안에 다순 베체 안에 선베제 최 제비기 롱메바 치와 삼바 되자 나저 지마시 디베링리아 안에 지게 최제라기 뒤스메바지 바 지금 내가로 지지 마사지 뒤스진이 조르고래서 언두스는 삼당고래서 Samdana sumsungtuan. Jusa sumdire.
So now let's look at the first root. So in the published book at the top of page 83 and the handout, the top of page 94. So the first root is the contemplation that is certain that we will die. And each of the root contemplations has 3 reasons. This has 3 points or 3 reasons. The contemplation that the Lord of Death will certainly come and there is no way to prevent this. So the first part, the contemplation that the Lord of Death will certainly come. So this is that death is certain. And the second part of this first reason, and there is no way that this can be prevented. Then the second reason, the contemplation that our lifespan cannot be increased, but diminishes incessantly. So moment by moment, breath by breath, this life, what remains of this lifespan is drawing towards its end. There is only one direction of travel. And then the third reason, the contemplation that we die without having much time to practice Dharma while alive. So this is a reason that in our modern world is so very clear, that we are so busy, consumed by so many activities, that when death comes, we've hardly had any time over this life to practice Dharma.
지난 치랑에 보고 된대 용그리 대긴강게 도도 요마레시베 디네 삼다나 델레다 당보니스 류지라시 랑바다 유강도 대바다 뒤남양 치위게 점벌 아니 솜레 송바스 송바스.
So now looking at the first of the 3 reasons, the collection of indicative verses that says that whatever body you have taken up and wherever you reside, you will be overcome by death at any time.
아니 마 류지라지 랑장스 아니 마시와지 하요 말에 사실 류지라지 랑바당 시데 제자당은 저기 개와실인데 베네 밀리 개와렘베네 에 탈레 개와렘베 류간에 개와렘베네 마시와지 타마라 마시와 하야 가요 말스 밀리 개와이 말 탈레 개와렘바 륜돌레 개와 지긴베네 아니 마시 타마 마시와 가요 말에 세베섬 다이디에서 월다.
Understanding this whatever body, this refers to whatever realm one is born within. If one is born as a human, death will come. If one is born as a god, death will come. So one cannot escape death by hoping for a better rebirth, a better situation. And this is also obviously true if one is born in the lower realms, such as an animal. Whatever realm or body one abides in, that body, that life will come to an end.
예산 류간이슬람바이네 류 첨보시네 마시알하요 말 충주이나 마시알하요 말 되느냐 게다 첨보르시네 지게 류실람바이네 마시알하요 말하다 미교보수부 교보치네 마시알하요 그디나 자도 섬다데 제사 셈제이나다 미나데 예마네 되는지 중화래로 디기스 되어버렸어 뭐도 and then that about the imagine that about the niki mashil hadir sil hayo marwa chesna the lo yalas de bare tini shiware sa ninya ma de tini juwar de so ba chasa nyema de tini juwar de semje de shiwar that densa thoya yo mar sa da nyema mi de shiwar densa thoya mar sa da du chin ma ji chasa 누시네 시드에 류간이슬람네 시 타말이야 시니메와 차이마도 두신 류지 데니지 렌제다 마시와드네 두신 타디올라도 여러세데 유니메바레서 오다 디네기 두신의 삼다에서 류지라시 랑장스네 아니 치와 온와마도 마치와 가요 말에서 두신 삼다에서.
And furthermore, when reflecting on this point, remind oneself that there is no person in our human world who will escape death. No matter how famous someone is, or even how infamous they may be, they will die. No matter how wealthy someone is, or someone impoverished, they will die. No matter how much power and influence someone has, or even someone who's enslaved, wherever one finds oneself, death will come. And moreover, even someone who's been in excellent health all their life, just like someone who's been struggling with poor health their entire life. For all, death will come. So there is no a situation within our world that one can strive for, thinking that one can evade death. Death has always come for every one of us human beings, and it will come again all too soon.
Then you go to the debatang, that you go to the debate, how much you are mares or you got it, you look at the dinner, she mares, you know, she are she much your lagres, dinner Europe, your mares, you go to Java that, Matras, your matter, she was saying about the Ungres, you go to the young, and she was more said, your mares.
It continues with wherever you reside. So there's nowhere that one can go. There's no place in our world that is safe from death. Death will visit every being in our world.
And again, that is one who's in some time, such as Chiwa never do, never hungry, such that the name do Namyang Chiwi Jumbars, Chisan, the getting Nimichi and Ganeshi nets. Nimichi Shiruri is a Shiru Chiwi Jumbes, Chini Meva Charuri, do you Namyang and do you Namyang Chiwi Jumbar, do you know Nimichi Shine and Meva Charuri?
And then the final part of the sentence, I'll just change it slightly. You will be overcome by death at some time. So the time will come when our death arrives. This is certain for all of us, wherever one resides, whatever one's situation in this world is, whether it's healthy or wealthy or famous, death will come.
Dynamia, see, Dynamia, Mashua, Union Mashua, our unit higher mar, Gedine, rather, Dynamia, Mishua, higher mar, Michitu, Chini Meva Charu, said Dynamia, said, Dynamia, Mashua, higher the Yomare, says.
And moreover, then, as it does say, death can come at any time. So it will come, and there is no certainty when, but death will come for all of us.
That is so, that led on your mobile, you call what like your land and they get some water. Then they get your land chinjela, and they take it, or then they get my she was high on my ass, as she do it. Any changes in my papa down, and the jigger, Lamen young and the devil, San Yeti, Jinane, Miyaji, led on your more around me, but you are the Yomares, just a disorder, and the chiwi. Then I changes my Papa Gaza, Sanyin, Papa Gaza Digi, and the Chiruers and Big around me by Chiruers and Big, and do I Yomaris, Yomaris.
So what's described here is a situation for each and every ordinary being throughout the realms of samsara. They are under the control of their contaminated karma and afflictions, and it is that will determine their death. But for beings who have gained liberation from samsara or freedom from samsara, they are free of having their death controlled for them, controlled by their karma and afflictions. So Arya Bodhisattvas, Theravada Arhats, Mahayana Arhats or Buddhas, they have attained freedom from the control of their afflictions and seeds. They are free of uncontrolled death. But all other beings, all non-Arya Bodhisattvas or Arhats, for them, their karma still determines their death.
And then Somna la Garson, Somle, Songba, that the Garson, there are one young, your bears, and Gasore, there are one, the young son, your bear, Droba, Dobda, Norda, Zeda, Nada, Manji, Dodo Mebars, and Diabole, Tambale, Sonsos, that the Luchiraji, Langbada, Ugando, Debada, Dynamia, Chivi, Jumbare, said Somnala Song your race, or some pitch Somnala Song your race. That in it, and the other, or Onwa Deyan and Jopada, Jope, Jeba, Topta, Norda, Zeda, Ngada, Menji, and Dodo Meper, and Jabola Tempicdonalia, Sonor.
Then Lama Tsongkhapa presents another quotation, as stated in well, not quotation, but references another text. As stated in the Advice to the King Sutra, it will come to pass in that way and cannot be averted by fleeing swiftly away or by force, wealth, material substances, mantras, or medicine.
Sandela Deji Zavedle Chiwang Chida Neba Onwa says to her, Deyan Kin you Dodo Meba Samba says to her. Do a Chida Neba Onwa. Did you yell it? Chida Dambo Chida Neba Onwa, Deyan Yundum Kin you Dodo Meba Samba Lara, Chida Neba Onwa said that some Danta Dirim. Luchiraj, Lucanis Lava in a she was to tend hungry, said. You go out your banner, she was hungry, said. Do you know your Mashiwa the Zawing your mother says some of that Chiwa never was. And then, King you told me about somebody said, oh, did the Chesada, Joba in a Jobe, and then drove up said to Sonia did him.
Lama Tsongkhapa, for a specific reason, references two texts here. So the first, the collection of indicative sutras, presents, and now we look at the name of this outline, presents that the Lord of Death will certainly come. Then the second reference is to the Advice to the King Sutra, and in here it's presented that there is no way to prevent this. So this is why Lama Tsongkhapa has two references in this point.
There's not any job, Jebam, just not a sheer, Jobo shoes in the number now, the dirt on Jetire, Malaysia, just a Jobo condition, a Jaros in a prayer in a Puritan, Mashi said in a Jetire was Mashia Chire, was a Yoma, Jobo condition in there, and Mashia delusion tire. The meaning of the Nigam Turajan, so the Shanajan Dredge part, drain, Jobo shoe and Dredge Jorba, or Jetire Yoruba. The Shiagi gains some kin Chasan Sang, the Shia deleted by Jetire Gayamares, Jetire, Jobocazina, Jobium, Jebams, and Jobocazina, Jetire Maregerina.
So death will come to pass in that way and cannot be averted by fleeing swiftly. So one of our responses when we in danger is potentially to flee. And if we recognize that the danger is great, then the wise thing would be to flee. But our impending death cannot be outrun. It is not possible. Even in modern machinery, we cannot outfly death. When our lifespan is up, death will come.
Then top na, that top Kazehevena, then she had a Gatoya marriage, top said the social Sutu, Nishu, Kazehevena, she had a Gatoya marriage, and Dinashin, Sosugi, Benewanchi Chimbo, top Sosugi, and the Robert Chicken, top Chimbo Kazeh, Robert Chicken Kazimanguena, the Sigi, and the Taya marriage, Jezan Denisa, the Benajidang and Zugi, Tubura Javena, Sosugi, Sutu, Chimbo, Shimbo in them, Pasha del Pat, and the top the Gatoya Yorba. Then I the nigger so shukshira mena, so sugar watching top chimboyana, and the top chin, so toya jorva. Just she did that, yen some you don't yen chasan do, that so sugar suktopiana, got to mare, and then so sugi, robot chicken, toshu, capture, shukchimboyana, got to mares, and just not top said it is order, top kitty got to mares.
Nor can our death be averted by force. So when we are faced with a critical situation, we can either try and flee it or to fight back. But our death cannot be overwhelmed by force. Even if we gather together many powerful friends and we try and overcome our death, this will not help. In other situations, force may well overcome a situation, but not when it comes to the ending of our life. When it's time to die, we cannot avert it.
Nordan, Nor said that you jealous, you Benjor, benjo kaze chembe ne benjo di thone ani shiwa de ka benjo ta je shiwa de ka to yo ma re se chin nor ta se sungurwa.
And no matter how much wealth one has accumulated over the course of one's life, one cannot bribe one's way or pay one's way out of death.
Na ze da se de ze dang a ju shiwa de ze ani ji ge ze yu thone an ji ge ga jin ze bin de ro de ma ro shi ne ji ze da ma la jin ma do ji chuan xiao sui jin pa ga jiao ro ba ji san di da ze yu thone an shiwa de ga to ya ma re se da de ze ga ze bi shi dang wei ne xi ye gen sam le ya de di ga to ye ge ne me re se ze da se di song duo.
If you think of soldiers in battle, they may have a selection of weapons that they can use to try and avert their enemy. There are no material substances that one can rely on to keep death at bay. Even those possessions that one values so, that one really cherishes, they cannot avert our death.
Dine nga sa, dine nga gyabche, nga zhang, nga gyabche, dine shiwa di ka yor besi, dine ka tuya ma res, nga nyuba chimbo ka ze nyamne, nyuba chimbo yor ne, nga gyabche, ane jige nga nyuba dobji ma shiwa di, ji yor ka tuya sen, dine me re, se re.
Furthermore, with mantras, so mantras can have great power and be of great assistance in circumstances, but not even powerful mantras can avert death.
Me, just that she can simply do Ming as a yabu down with a Mengi Tony, that machine de got to your marriage, many jazz. She's a daughter, didn't do by touch your marriage.
And then finally, even the very best of medical treatment cannot avert death.
Is that was in some diaries or that she was then she that she again some day to do that? So Sugi, Jake. And driven a dread mare, so Sugi, Topshu in a Topshu Bijit on the Katumare, so Gujala in a Gujala Bijit on the Shiva de Katumare, Zedang, Nadang, remember Gazette, Jikawa, Magazeti, men down by ne, those in the Shiva de Katu, Mare, Sista, the Nigit that Mebazan, Nimichi Shidra, say some diaries.
So here in your reflection, you recognize that when my death comes, as much as I may not want it to overwhelm me, as much as I may want to remain, there's nothing that I can do. I cannot try and outrun my death. I cannot fight it away. I cannot buy my way out of this situation. There's no material substance, medicine, or mantra that I can rely on. There's no way to avert our death.
Kama Bishelnes, Dada Chiwi Jigwa Shukwe, Chikar and Miserwa Shukwe de Ogol, Dele and Done, Dada Michi Chikar Dangla Semo Deba, Songso Osa.
The Lama Tsongkhapa continues with Geshe Kamawa. Geshe Kamawa instructed, you should fear death now, but as the moment of death, you must not be apprehensive, but at the moment of death, you must not be apprehensive. We, however, do it the other way around. We are not afraid now, but at the moment of death, we dig our fingernails into our chests.
대한 유비가 랑한 가서 오다 시루다 시외는 계조 냠는 마제바제 시선데 배사기를 대선 비게 삼로시 고고리 했어요. 근데니지 고고를 해서 치외지 받고 해서 다 데니기 제가 다 계시위 데니기 맛이 대부 유비가블라 소소 디바샤고디 샤 계조 풍선 초바 중요도 아니 치가 미세화시고 돼서 제가 데니 제반은 시갈라마들이야 아니 지게 샘자가 하면 흘려지고 거래서 데니시 고고를 해제래다 데니 원해진 데니시 고고를 제가다 먼저 대부 유비가 오다 기디시 내가 요마다 제가 데니기 데니장에다 디바샤다 개변염내 제하고 제고래서 디제베는 엔시 시갈라마들이야 아니 샘자용 말에서 미세화지 고거래 데니시 고고를 해제래
So Geshe Kamawa instructs you should fear death now, but at the moment of death, you should not be apprehensive. So this is the same as what has been presented earlier in terms of the kind of mindfulness of death that should be generated, which is that by reflecting on the impermanence of our life, we develop a concern to create the causes to ensure that our next life is another excellent rebirth, to create the causes in what remains of this life to ensure our ongoing spiritual journey can continue unimpeded. So the concern should only be about utilizing well what remains of this life. If one is doing so, if one then does so, then one will have no need to fear death because one is preparing. So whilst one is preparing, one's mind will be at ease because you know you're preparing. When death comes, having prepared well, your mind will be at ease.
어디니 고고 이내 당랑서 거리었으네 오골 사진 알아서 세워 오고 딜레 도네 딜레 도셔요 세상에 가지고 시지게 데비가 브랜드레 안 시그레스 배 삼단제 되네 안에 디게 디바샤야다 게주르데 용고 말해서 오고 딜레 도데 다다 미지바 다대가 저기 데비가라네 시그레스 배 삼로 고고 말 마고 봐서 아니 개와 디바샤다 개와 두고 말해지 세상다 다 시가를 말해도 갈 수는 어당의 시를 빼사살 셈비 셈체지 두시네 안지 두시온 거래 해지 세상이 두시온 거래 해지 되네.
Then Geshe Thubten continues. We, however, do it the other way around. In other words, our approach is the opposite to what it should be. We are not afraid now, but rather we pass our time in the laziness of distraction and with procrastination. This just means that at the time of our death, we'll dig our fingernails into our chests. In other words, when death comes, regret for this wasted opportunity and apprehension about what is to follow arises.
어디서 당한지기다 지기 치와 잠바 치와 검나한테 된듯이 공부를 해서 다도 신하들 삼다데 나라 치와 메타바 삼다 시오라 치와 메타바 템부요 말에 시사다 치와 메타바 삼다 당한지 기네 안바 밀 삼다면다 냐마디 와도 미첼을 구베네 쳇 냐마니마다 쳇망고 뒤고 해야다 다다데가 그러면 미 첼까지 되는 로자라 시교 야 베네니 야다 주라데 이슈로 스테베니마도 셴덴마 니가야 요마 시루레스 가신 로둑주나 시루레스도 셴 삼다 이네 삼다데 셈제이네 안진디게 로까지 되베네 되니기 지로세 되네 니미지 시루야마도 네 하야가요 말와 삼도 셴데 삼제다 되네 담당여도 안지마지 안다시에데 도 셴데 진 가신에 로 안지 주정한 니슈 되네나 시루 가신에 야지 롱아둑나 가신에 야지 남산께는 남산 시루고 시디네 여러와다 두 삼다딘 마 되네 삼다데 다두스네 다던다 안지 치워 삼다 시오라지 치워 미다와 삼다세 다장제레 기지 마 유어바 유어도마도 유어 자와 균에 주에 메바 딱바데 요 말에 세베다데만 삼노콘 이거데 미다바 치워 삼다데 제가 치워 유르도 수도 시루도 알아데 딱바 기지나 마시베 템부시 돼야지 요 말에 세베 삼로 시디 코고로 왔다 당고 디기 다 치워 미다바 삼다데 두시네.
So within the three roots, the first is the contemplation that it is certain that we will die. And within that, the first reason is that death will certainly come and there is no way to prevent it. So the reflection here is on the certainty of our death. So we have a limit to our lifespan. So there's an average within our nation, average to the lifespan. And that being an average, there are many who surpass that. But even those who live long beyond the average within a community, they still have a maximum stretch, a maximum lifespan that cannot be surpassed. And again, in relation to this average lifespan, it is only average because many do not surpass that lifespan. And for ourselves, there is no certainty. Even if we look at as a prediction how the length of life of our relatives, that we can say is a general guide, but there is still no clear evidence as to the length of this life. But what is certain is when our lifespan, the limit of our lifespan is reached, this life will end. And that length of that lifespan varies for each being. For some, their lifespan is very brief. They don't even survive out of the womb. Others, they die at birth. Others, only a few months old. And others then, everywhere in between. There is no certainty at all as to how long one's lifespan is. But what is certain is when the limit is reached, then one's life ends. The second point to go along with this. So the first point is that we cannot live beyond whatever our lifespan may be. And the second point is our lifespan is not static. The way we relate to our life is as if it is permanent in the sense of being unchanging. And this is why we have this feeling, this innate sense that we will always be here. But this is not the case. Our lifespan is diminishing moment by moment. Every breath is one less that we will have in this life. That is the reality of our situation. So we need to recognize that not only is our lifespan finite, but we in every moment are approaching that end. So here we reflect on impermanence, reflecting on at a subtler level of how we are moving moment by moment closer to the end of this opportunity.
Dinege samda da dos chine che samda. Dine samda dos samda ya dos chine. Ane ganzum jilia ya che xie di ta nian ye ro de ben lo zhu tan ba de wei na. Ane logic zhuo du ane ce ge da logic li xie ta nian ru lo ni de ta nian ye ru lo. O du xian samda dine lo samda. An dao la samda dao ji zhuo de ta nian ye ru. Dine xia hua samda xia hua ji 다와 찍래 샤워 숨주여 봐서 다와 찍주도 샤워 찍줘도 다 타냐 님이 니시들고 받으면 님 샤워 니도 니스 잡게 마도도 스타 타냐 주고 된 마지네 다 샤워 찍는 주제 삼다 님이 인생지를 주진 접시 여반에 주시 찍 조여도다 니시 자수 받으면 도신 다도신이 되니 쇼게는 주제 중일 삼다나 단데 주제 찍 조르도 다 주제 죽지 말 하야 마도 되니 주제를 가면 죽지 담으시도 Dine dushinda chuzi chik nale samdawe na chiza karma chik sodo de chiza dushin chiza da karma chik nala second yoba da chiza dide ngansul ya du samdan dusu tiba chik tung roya ma chimado dine samdado da chik dusu tung roya di dejin anzo chiwa samdanga roya chiwa samdanga kiene da lo mangbu iringli chiye ke samdanga roya dushinda samdanga dine lo ngobji nala nishu nala sumji nala dawa 아니 간수 두신 뒤수 좋아야 돼 삼다들 로직 소대 직 뉴로 인수 된 다와지 뉴로 된 다와 되는 샤파 되는 추제 되는 베네 추지나라야 가차 숨 두기담 여러와 두기 되는 대 추제지나라다 파 지게 깔차라 지요 베네 깔차지나 되는 지금 때베도 된 두시 삼다 되는 아주시 깨직 뒤수 나도 유하셔야 돼 베직 깨지 유화 주고요 받마도 되게 깨지기가 미니 유화 맞아 봐 내디 매바시 도시나 하고 거와 되네 하고도 미다바 참어 세다 하고 거래 제가 당아지 치와 미다바 당고 치와 미다바 삼다 니기 가를 띵고라서네 초진에 아주 치와 미다바 삼다 되게 미다바 참어디 또야래 핑고르다디 마마선에 람갈 마선 디수고르다 디 치와 미다 봤습다디 두chen 점당이 된 두chen 된 마마마마 되는 주제 다 로다 다와다 주제다 되는 karma다 kar샤 두 점당 두chen 되는 지디 빼 통노질이야 지 교화주고 마도 되는게 윤에 유화 마도 봐 kar샤지 얘네 애매바디 하고 해야지 리고로 봐 제가 되는 미다가 참었어야 돼 두시 하고 해야 돼아 디기 만 람갈 마선 야 티고로 와 되네 삼다다데 로게 chercher 딴 거로 와도 쓰네.
A key part of this meditation is not just, as the outline says, that death is certain and that there's no way to prevent our death. But what we really are trying to do is to shake up this innate sense that our life is stable. So this is the understanding of the word permanent, that our life is stable. So to shake this up, engage in the meditation as mentioned, but also reflect on the passage of time. You look at the number of years you've lived. That number of years is let's say it's 50. There are 50 years less of one's lifespan. Or to express it differently, one is 50 years closer to the end of this life. And if you take a period of time, perhaps a period of time you've been coming here, and let's say you've been coming here 5 years, that's 5 years that has passed. That's 5 years closer to the end of this life. And if we think of, say, this year, there are 8 completed months already that have passed. And those are 8 months closer to the end of this life. And likewise, since we last gathered together here was 2 weeks ago, that's another 2-week period that's gone. 2 weeks less of this life. And likewise, today is already half finished. And that means we are this much closer to the end of this life. And so too is this teaching session. This time together, this hour and a half together, is already largely complete. And that period of time too is what we are that much closer to our own death. So think in this way again and again to challenge this feeling of stability that we have. And whilst we live under the influence of this sense of stability, it is deeply misguided. Our life is never static, but is constantly changing. So in the meditation, challenge this feeling of stability, but to recognize momentary change, that our life is not lasting and stable, but is in a constant state of flux, and recognize that our situation is actually greatly unstable, although we relate to it as if it were completely stable. This is a crucial point to come to in the meditation and to have as an overriding guide for our life. It leads us to the later realization of subtle impermanence. Because generally the meditation on death is largely a focus on coarse impermanence. But in this way, you approach through a subtle impermanence. And this is deeply beneficial. So again, we're trying to challenge this mistaken belief that our life is stable, when actually it's in a constant state of flux and is deeply unstable.
Bendigo so yadu shin samda de so ran keji ra mini ba samda to mi da ba dina shin da nga ju chilo ge jala da xing dong da do da ge da be ne je sa de xing dong ro xin ne dang bo chung chung de ge ba ji ji gan du xin me do ra sha de ne gam pa se do je sa de chilo de mi da ba ju ho ro keji da nga ju de ne ji ne ji xing do ji ba du sta ne be ji nyama lo mangu shi da ga ra ye de ba sam go ro ba ine ko ju wa ju go ro ba dang ju me do sha gan da we ne se bu ro ha go do me do ba ji ba mi de ma ji me do sha de ma ni ma kha shen na lam sa ye ji de ga sam ji lia gang bo chen me ba sa du do ji de za je san chi lo gi du shi gi che kan de chi ne da so ya su gi chi wa me da ba sam da de ne so chi wa me su de ne me da ba sam da sam me so de me da sa ye de du shi gi che kan de chi ne da du shi ne 미다와 나바냐 자지 제가 다 뒤지게 최간에 뒤지 탐지 미다와 세디네 하고 뒤지 탐지 미다와 제가 뒤지게 최간에 지내야 교화전에 깨지기지 지네 지로한 마도 깨지기지 마지바디 가 민도와 선배게 셈려야 롱해바 타셔바시 리고로 되네 지디 뒤지 탐지 미다와 세 하고 제가 되네서 지와 미다와 삼단하지기 두 지내야 지와 미다와 꿈되네 미다와 참어되네 최 뒤지기 최탐 제 미다와 임바다 하고 해야 돼 발리고로 되네시네
In this meditation, focus primarily on your own lifespan, recognizing how it is unstable and constantly in a state of flux. Then, when you go about your day, try to keep your mind quiet and attentive and be aware of the world around you, recognizing that things, whatever we perceive, it appears to our mind as being stable, as being static. But then relate your meditation to whatever you're perceiving, and at least intellectually recognize that everything we perceive, that we see, that we hear, that we taste, is actually in a constant state of flux. So when looking out the window, you may, if you have a garden, you'll see powerful trees, and you'll see delicate flowers. So the tree certainly looks stable. The flower also appears to our mind as such. But flowers we can quickly recognize. They open and close every day, so they clearly are changing. But the tree stays stable. But when we think for a moment from the perspective of momentary change, neither the tree nor the flower are any different. They both are changing momentarily. The tree is changing as rapidly as the flower. We just perceive them both as stable, in particular, the tree. This is completely mistaken. Both of them are approaching the end of their existence at the same speed. One assumes the flower will die before the tree, but they are both approaching their end at the same speed. So thinking like this, in meditation and as you go about your day, starts to shake up this wrong perception of stability and remind ourselves all that appears to our mind is changing momentarily. Things do not exist in the way they appear. All compounded phenomena change momentarily. So this is a deeply important meditation.
Now do some that midaba sometime ngang zugila dazin de do ru ngang zugila dazin shukchim bo ro da ba zime dazin de shukchim bo do sim midaba some de dazin de do ro dazin do ba na yu de la mi bi cha dang do ro cha de do ro de ne ngang zu ga de si er sin bin ne ngang zu yi xing do tong ben de ngang zu lo ju juang an ye tong ben de odi xing de nian ban ge tong song da ga tong song la ge ro现在年嘛通话的大浪的路上边个就运没把就把这什么个话的，现在地嘛是话好就要切的，然后就还没就是地还没话，就大家人什么大人切个，但俺说俺做什么大的，俺看上俺老年嘛的那些年嘛俺的那些穷高的那些，俺的那些些什么去了俺的那些些的，但是俺就变得那些罗切的开始接了。Longama de Lose Kachir Ding Zibene, Logi Cavaro, that did Logi Cherwa, Yama Logi Chumarwa. Cesada, Logi Cher in Yama Yomar, what the Bene. Cesar Yama de Yamaka, that is awesome, that ma Gasarche, but you are Shinji, you are Lady. Cesar some another, that the Taharadi, Longama Yores and the Samlo Chadier, did 1,000 Chadier. Did Tata Maria.
By engaging in the meditation in the way that's being advised here, where you come down to look at momentary change, this is so important because an ignorance that deceives us so is the ignorance of grasping at permanence, or to translate it differently, the ignorance of grasping at things as being unchanging. Because this is how we relate to everything that appears to our mind, everything we see or think about or hear. It appears as if it is unchanging, fixed or stable. But when we reflect from the perspective of momentary change, we'll recognize that everything is in a constant state of flux. But this is not how we perceive the world. We come here, and this environment looks the same as when we saw it last. When one then goes home and sees one's house, it looks exactly the same as before. And when you see the garden, yeah, it's pretty much the same. We relate to things as being stable, as fixed and unchanging. When we think for a moment, we recognize they're in a constant state of flux. Then it's perhaps easier to see this in the external world, but then look at yourself. When we think of ourselves over our life, we'll think of ourselves, our previous self. Perhaps we look at photographs of us on holiday or when we were at school, and we think, that's who I am. That was me. But we have changed so much since then. Even if you think of what we were up to a year ago, between then and now, our body has changed significantly in terms of on the cellular level and so forth. And certainly our mind is constantly in a state of flux. But we don't relate to ourselves in this way. This is ignorance. And likewise in how we relate to others. When we meet someone that we know, we immediately relate to them as being the person that we knew them as before. So this misapprehension of all that appears to us is this grasping at permanence. And it too is an ignorance that we need to overcome. So by meditating on the impermanence of our life down to the level of subtle impermanence, we should then apply it much more broadly so as to challenge this ignorance.
Didn't the Chiva Mitapa, Namching, me some died, do some died, down to Mitapa, Chiva Mitapa, Mitapa, some dashi or then Ma do some the Mitapa, just charge the Mitapa Chamo de Yahwada. Mitapa Chamo de Yahwada, and then dinner, and the Chigi. Mitapa Chamo de Gudagian, like doing the Jubadi, how you Gundigi Dente, how Gundigi Dente, how would Gudi, Jebu, Gushil, doing Mother Gulamatoba Jubameva. Gudi and Jebuchil, doing a Gusha or Mother Jebulamatoba Gusha Meva. Sometimes do she didn't. You could Jebul doing a Shahovaza that didn't up at tennis. Got tennis, how do you stamina? Says that the Gala and Madoba rang when you drew to your mother, if it didn't come in, sometimes this shit, didn't Demamajuba Dame, but the Demamajuba Doyalia, Undus and Tanya and Liver. She said, Dinigi, that they want to chew Midaba, some Digi, Midaba Chamoto Lolia, that Manshil Mason as we got it, Manshis, Dinigi argued, Manshis nets of Marwa. Dinigi area to do dinner, and this jigger dinner, the dinner, Nam Undigi dinner, dinner Undigi dinner, dinner top at dinner, dinner top at dinner, Namshis, and then rushing about to Tomani to Agid. Or do sin Yarge, try down the Lamgadi, dinner sugar or water. And Pingo, dinner Pingo down to that.
So I encourage you to engage in these meditations in the way that I'm guiding, because there is a sequence to the Lamrim presentation. The meditation starts out by looking at coarse impermanence, because this is easier for us to recognize. But in the same meditation then, the way I've just mentioned, move your understanding to subtle impermanence, or your reflection to subtle impermanence, with the difference being coarse impermanence is what one can observe readily through the senses. Subtle impermanence, this is momentary change, which we can only understand intellectually, so that things change on a momentary basis. So this is the first and the second step, and that's what is explicitly presented here. And if you knew, then this is as far as you meditate. But many of you have been receiving teachings for years, so you can take it deeper. But before you take it deeper, start with coarse impermanence in the way that's guided. And then, in the way that's guided, move to subtle impermanence. Don't skip that. But then take it deeper. Recognizing that whatever is impermanent is dependent, has come about in dependence on causes. Whatever is impermanent has come about in dependence on causes. And every cause is interdependent with its subsequent result. In other words, a result, whether desired or undesired, has come about in dependence on causes. Therefore, and now the opposite direction, every cause we accumulate has the potential to lead to a result. So there's this mutual dependency. Just to repeat it, every result we experience, both wanted and unwanted, has come about in dependence on causes accumulated. Equally, every cause that we accumulate has the potential to lead to a result, whether desired or not. There is this interdependency between cause and effect. So here, one starts with coarse impermanence, moving to subtle impermanence. And from subtle impermanence, you move to dependent arising. And dependence on causes is the most apparent. Because something is dependent on causes, it means it cannot exist by way of its own nature. But it has to be empty of existing by way of its own nature. So for those many of you who have received extensive teachings on the presentation on emptiness, you'll be able to make this link from dependent arising to emptiness. So this is the skillful way to engage in this meditation.
Ibane ngajugle sumba tarase ngaju dose dinma sumba nashin and sumba karsongrasne celo ja tubani sitar nanglas de tubdu chugyang de bar yoloni dawa sha yin chen and sonwe selas de yang ngajo so sonwe sebe na chi ane chi che deyang ngar dumashi se na xing lakbar yang la yang nembar mebar ne dije bar barma dije barma chido yubi chir.
Having looked at the first reason in relation to the first root, let's come to the second reason, the contemplation that our lifespan cannot be increased but diminishes incessantly. As the Descent into the Womb Sutra says, attaining a lifespan of 100 years seems to be the limit of what is possible. However, even if you reach that, the years until then are consumed with the passing of month after month, day after day, day and night. As they too are consumed with the passing of morning and so on, it seems that much of your lifespan has already finished, and the remainder also diminishes incessantly without anything being added.
Dadine ngajulyo sumbatar celo jatubani sidar nala sidang anasa da ngajimi ce jatuyadi nyunyures celo dine nyunyures or sidana nyunyures siba mangachade lo jamale nyel ba shiru lo jadye nyunyures or that.
As the Descent into the Womb Sutra says, attaining a lifespan of 100 years seems to be the limit of what is possible. Yes, we know in our modern world, and certainly in countries such as this, there are a number of people who make their century or live even a little longer. But the vast majority of people do not even attain that. They die some years before attaining 100.
Tubdu Chugyan said the Lord Yadeba Inaya, Deba Inaya, Tubdu Chugyan, Debra Yuloni, Dawa dan Dawa, and quote Dawa Chicks or the Lord Nyuru, Dawa de Pasha, Nyuru to Gores, Dawa dan Dawa, Shatan, Shabachik to the dead, Dusine, and then Nina, and Nimich to the set tone or change to the set tone or just a Nina, Senson, Sebas, and Sedu Soru or Dowry to the Shiele Tanya, Lojadina, go Dowry to the Shiele Tanya to go, Lord to the Shiela Tanya, Dowry to the Shiatanya, then Shabada. And Jiki Nima that chance the Nimichi Zoro, and she ala Tanya to do in Cesoro Gores, Zoedi, to Sugores, Ceselas.
The text continues. However, even if you reach that limit, the years until then are consumed with the passing of month after month, day after day, day and night. So here what Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, that even if we do happen to have a number of years left, maybe even decades left, these constantly reduce. There's the constant passing of time. Time never stands still, but diminishes incessantly. So this limit to our lifespan, we are drawing ever closer to it.
So song yes, Sevana, Shuvechi, Shuvecha, Naro, Tuesday, Dumarin, but Tuesday, Gavard, said New to war, just a douche, Naro, Soviet, and Naro, and Yango, the douche in the Chiros, and Tush, say to war, second rest. Jeza, T, Dea, Nardo magic, say Nash, Yamagas. Said Madu, Zordo Gores, Jezada said, Lama has in a daily and never gas Gayomaris, Hala, Numbaya maybe. That but Penelojatama doing Juzama says, Casper, Penny, Dujama says, that's some you do, some Jugale, and you should never gas and never get married. That real time married, or that. Hala, Numbaya maybe. Number maybe. She's a new dread, Jewel Jebade, new dread, Tono dread. Parma to gun much about Ligores, Parmach to you very yes, if it is. Modushin some tango regida.
Lama Tsongkhapa continues. As they too are consumed with the passing of morning and so on. So this references that each of these larger time periods in the previous sentence, month after month, day after day, day and night, these we should reflect that each of these have shorter periods of time. And in this way, we can come to reflect how our time is rapidly passing. As they too are consumed to the passing of morning and so on, it seems that much of your lifespan has already finished. And this too then is likely to be the case for the vast majority of us. And the remainder, so whatever remains of our life, is also diminishing incessantly without anything being added. So here, what we are being drawn to understand is that our lifespan is, the limit of our lifespan is being approached moment by moment. This expanse of time we imagine we have is reducing every moment, whether it's decades or days. That is reducing moment by moment, and there's nothing we can do. We can't look back and say, well, I wasted that 30-year period of my life. Let me add it on now that I want to put my life to good use. There's nothing we can do. We cannot add time to our lifespan.
Data chiwari jimi gyuru she son soos.
Lama Tsongkhapa quotes Shantideva. Day and night without respite, this life decreases constantly. If nothing comes to add to it, then how could one like me not die?
Dada ninsen deba yue mebra sede nina chen du shin chedi maso ba je de ne gi du su jo mares kaza nina nin ji zhuo de chedi tong ruo chen ji zhuo de chedi tong ruo du shin ninsen gi ji yawa meba du ba che chi ye le ta nian nian ru guo ji ma do de ne gi mi de du su jo mares je de ane chedi da du gui yu shin se de je sa chen an zu che lo jia du de wei na je sa de ni le du de Kichi ma guevas nyung rugores or the ma nyung rugores. The Nezada Numba Guina Mesh Delian that the Serin Danga Zoru, the Serin Sus and Serin Nebajaya Maresia. She said Dineza, Mevaza, Jezada, Dada Chiwa Jimigus, Jezan Susumachua, and the higher Kawaya to Yomar was or Dada Chiwa Jimigus.
Shantideva's written here is very clear. And it is that our what remains of our life diminishes every day. And in fact, every hour we have 1 hour less. This just is our situation, that moment by moment we are approaching the end of this life. Our lifespan is only decreasing. The time we have in this body is only decreasing. And we cannot add to our lifespan. That just is our situation. And this is something to recognize. And this because we cannot alter the length of our lifespan.
kewa chima dunye samba kiada. Dene kewa chima dunye samba kido, kewa chima yakbo yongya nga son le madroya dundala, ni dipa shaba ne, dipa shaya gosa. Oda kewa chima, drosa de ngandro de dendro nima de mebare. Chisa de nimire de shiya ta nye ruwa. Dene zada nga dipa ma shaba ine nga son ki ruwa. Dene dipa shaya ge samlo le, dipa shaya samlo le yadu, dimba shaya ge dipa shaya ruwa re yejere. Chisa da kewa chima nga son le ma tarne, ngondo koba togu, chisa di togu wanza di ngondo koba toye gyudi pa samdaje, pechi daje, denege, ngane ngondo gyudi zhuyungu re. Chisa denege samdaba ina, nga son le kari keban yore lana, yama saji dipa de shaya ki samlo kye, ane dipa samlo kye ne dipa shaya tang. Dene ane kewa chima ngondo koba toye ki tobe chido donye ki samlo kye, di tobe chido kewa zhuyo gyu sabada yungu re es. Chisa di yobaza, denege samlo korna di yungu re. Chisa denege samlo makho chido usha shasha mena, nanzu dene samlo matangba ina kichiki juzidin zuwa gyuwa dhugo re, samlo matangna gyuwa dhugo re, tangna gyuwa dhugo chibi chigi re, gyuwa dhugo re, khyabra kahame re. Da samlo tangba ina kari khyabra yorosina, nanzu ngarje dipa sa shaya da. Ane kewa chima ngondo da koba toya ki, kewa dhuya ki, kewe nyamne chaya di yungu re. Chisa tsoksa tipchaya di tugo re. Chisa di samtangya ki, goeba yumtsen di tsoksa tipchaya chaya ki donda, kewa chima ngondo koba toya ki donda, donye dumba kiya, di tobi ki donye dumba ki, di tobi ki gyu le pechi tanya donda, nga son le kewa kaya ki, kewa ki gyu, dipa shaya, dipa saya di, dipa shaya zi mewa soya ki samtaya di yungu rwa. Di tablam chido, diga je samtangwa di dusu samtangwa re ese. Chesan chiwa mitaba samtangwa, dusu samtangwa, dusu dine chogo, nine zoro gore samtangwa do, nga da kewa daden rugo udu sambe samlo ligi re. Chesan dusu dine zoro, danga martin dusu zoro udu sambe samlo ligo re. Chesan dine zang kewa dhubya diya, dada lamsang dhubya ki donye kiya da, dine ki kewa chima donye kewa chima ki gyu kewa saya ki donye kiya di yungo re je, dusu ne. Chesan desu samtangwa di, donda nyingbo tingi nga zo deshi tangbo shaya de, kewa chima donye ki dumba kiya da, kewa chima tenpyo lo kiya, dine chima dewa dhubya tab tenpa se, tab dingi di nyamlen yoya ki donda la, tangbo dusu samtangwa desu samlo digi ligi re se wara. Dati nga nzuki di kewa chima shira ma tenpa da, dine chwe che yagi namye lawa de karasi se di samki jawa kiya je lawa de karasi chiwa di dengyo ma res. Chiwa ma tenpa eza, nga zo shiki ma re sambe samlo diyo de res. Chesa di chiwa ma re sambe samlo di notu re, di maha mewa soya la ya, di kar samtana shiki re, kati shiki nyeba yo ma re, dine res, gyumzen samtana, oda shiki ma re sambe samlo do rugu re so. Chesa di nyembo re, da nga zo samlo na la ya, gyuen di kar sa, nga shiki ma re sambe samlo shio re, di notu res, di pa mewa soya go res, di mewa soya tanda kar sa go res, oda chiwa tenpa da namchi ngeme tenpa du samtawa shikimare sampe do samlo do rugu re che shikimare sampe samlo di pa nyembo leya do ane karshi kosana o dine kewa chima donye yu dunpa kiya da chime tela digi dhubya ke kewa saa di yungu re es chisan di yungpa ina da nga zo shiwe kabri ya ane semlo lo chen shiya da ganga kaya mara din kewa chima ina digi dhubya ki ten chebra chen tobi ten tela yang anji digi dhubya ngondo yo ke digi longcho ya da dendele yang nga zuki kewa nyamne che kogu de rago re ese dona nyingbo de disung gorda.
Whilst what is presented here in conclusion by Shantideva is the actual situation. This is not something that we think about. And in fact, if we hear about it, we generally in society one backs away from such discussion, such contemplation. But it's essential that we do think about this. Because it is through not thinking about our impending death that we live our life in distraction. Thinking about the reality of our situation as presented here is the antidote to living a life of procrastination and distraction. The purpose then of this meditation is to shake us awake from our stupa that is so focused on this one life, and is therefore a mind that it gets excited by the potential achievement of insignificant pleasures, and a mind that is so often upset and disturbed by insignificant problems. through this meditation, we rather come to recognize what is truly valuable. And it's not these pleasures we've enjoyed in this life or these problems that have tormented us so. Most of those are long forgotten. All of them are forgotten on our deathbed. What is important is accumulating the causes that will ensure ongoing excellent rebirths and our continued spiritual development. This is important. So through meditating in the way described here, this helps us to develop a sustained determination to focus on what is important and to let go of what is unimportant. And it brings about a way of thinking that whatever we are doing, we are focused on the two of accumulation of virtue and the purification of non-virtue. So when we encounter unwanted circumstances and difficulties, with a mind that's more concerned about lives to come than on this life, we'll relate to this difficulty as the ripening of non-virtue, and with a sense of lightness, we'll recognize that's a purification. Something non-virtuous is now ripened in this unwanted circumstance, and we can let it go and strengthen our determination to refrain from non-virtue and accumulate virtue. Similarly, when encountering wholesome or wanted circumstances, we'll enjoy them with a more relaxed mind, recognizing this is just the ripening of virtue, nothing to get too excited or distracted by, but rather to strive in the further accumulation of virtue. So not let our mind now be overtaken by desire at this pleasure, but rather to keep our mind focused on what is important. So in this way, by reflecting on the impermanence of this life, we let go of this life's concerns, and we focus on both purifying past misdeeds and restraint from the accumulation of new misdeeds, and thirdly, the accumulation of virtue that will lead to excellent rebirths and our progression towards enlightenment. So in brief then, the reason for this presentation on the impermanence of life, the reason for you to reflect repeatedly on the impermanence of this life, is so that you can develop and engage in a sustained and focused manner on accumulation and purification. And accumulation means strengthening our habituation to wholesome, virtuous ways of thinking. And purification leads to breaking, for first weakening and then breaking our habituation to non-virtuous ways of thinking. And in this way, the way we relate to this life's experiences will start to change. And with this change, we'll live this life with less procrastination, less laziness of distraction. We'll rather have a recognition that every day is of great value. Every hour within that day is of great value. Every session, such as now when we are together, is of great value, and we will want to make the most of it. In this way, for sure, whatever remains of this life, we will live it in a meaningful way. And that means when the time of our inevitable death comes, we will look at the period of life before today and think, I could have done better. But we can look at the period from today and say, I lived my life to its full. I really achieved so much. And these are the imprints that with confidence I know will carry through with me into my next life. In my next life, I will start earlier. I'll start earlier engaging in virtue with a delight in virtue and a disinterest in wasting another life. So in this way, we will leave this body with a mind that is relaxed, without regret, and confident in our future rebirth. Then thank you. Then we can conclude there for this weekend. Thank you.